Hello everyone, my name is Eshta. I'm a PhD student at University of Toronto. I'll be discussing how we can operationalize a data curation lens within machine learning dataset development processes. This was joint work done with PhD students and faculty at University of Toronto. Previous research has established that bias in ML models often causes discriminatory or unethical judgments towards specific populations. The biases found in these cases are widely attributed to the choices made about datasets used for training ML models. One example of this is that datasets are often reused across tasks which are outside the original context they were created for. Appropriate data use is also hindered by the hidden, tacit, and undervalued nature of data work. To address these issues, the study of data practices has become prominent. One branch of these studies, within the FACT community and others, discusses the adoption of principles from archival studies and digital curation into dataset development processes for machine learning research. Studies have called for ethical data curation and methods from archival studies, as these fields have long dealt with large amounts of data and concerns of representativeness, ethics, and integrity, and therefore can provide methods and resources to enable reflection on these matters. Our work builds on these studies by asking, how should data curation concepts and methods inform ML data practices? To answer this, we conceptualized a framework using data curation principles to evaluate existing ML practices. In the following slides, I'll be presenting how this process of designing and applying the framework revealed strengths and weaknesses of current dataset development practices, as well as challenges and adapting principles from a data-focused field like data curation for the model-focused field of ML. Data curation has been defined by institutions in varying ways, on occasion coupled with digital curation. One of these definitions state that data curation is the activity of managing data throughout its life cycle, appropriately maintaining its integrity and authenticity, ensuring that it is properly appraised, selected, securely stored, and made accessible, and supporting its usability in subsequent technology environments. The Digital Curation Center also has created a life cycle model with stages of curation that projects undergo. It emphasizes that each stage of curation must be purposeful and attend to stewardship and future use. Machine learning research has responded to the call for accountability and transparency in datasets by increasing development of context documents like datasheets, data statements, and so on. Other prominent work has also examined intrinsic and extrinsic biases in datasets, including values in dataset development. There is also emerging interest in how we can adopt knowledge from archival studies and data curation into ML. For example, archives have codes of conduct and ethics to ensure data curators consider and document if data should be collected at all based on potential risks and benefits. Overall, there are two key benefits that data curation provides that make it distinct from ML data work. Firstly, data curation has defined inputs, outputs, outcomes, tasks, and reasons for performing each stage in the curation lifecycle. All of these elements are defined and implemented through policies that hold stakeholders accountable and enable transparency. Secondly, data curation's lifecycle approach focuses on adding and maintaining long-term value across each stage. In our work, we answer the call from previous research by providing a method to adopt knowledge from data curation into ML in practice. Our framework was developed and applied using a multi-stage design pictured here. We first performed literature reviews and concept mapping to identify aspects of data curation currently used in ML dataset creation and those that can be further adopted. We organized these concepts into a rubric. We iteratively developed this rubric by improving the descriptions of the elements and their evaluation criteria. After several iterations, we developed additional resources to support the use of the rubric, packaged together as a toolkit. This included instructions about how to apply the rubric, guiding principles, recommendations, FAQ, a glossary, and more. Finally, in order to study whether a compilation of data curation concepts as a rubric was feasible for ML dataset development, we conducted a sample set of evaluations by applying the rubric and toolkit on datasets published in NeurIPS. So firstly, here's a summary of the rubric elements. It consists of 19 elements across 5 groups, namely scope, ethicality and reflexivity, data pipeline, data quality, and data management. Each element in the rubric is evaluated on 2 levels, which are a minimum standard and a standard of excellence. The former is evaluated on a pass-fail basis and the latter using none-partial full. We developed the rubric so that the minimum standard relays the expected level of documentation from all ML datasets, while the standard of excellence advocates for a high level of criticality. Here is an example of one of the elements in the scope category of the rubric, specifically requirements. Briefly, it expects a dataset creation plan for the minimum standard and consideration of how problem formulations can introduce intrinsic biases for the standard of excellence. This echoes data curation's emphasis on data management plans that are established at the beginning to guide the entire curation process. And we can also see that glossary terms are linked in the rubric. To study whether data curation concepts were feasible and relevant for ML dataset development in practice, we performed a sample set of evaluations using datasets published in NeurIPS. In order to ensure that our framework was feasible, it had to yield consistent evaluations across multiple reviewers. We therefore conducted evaluations in 4 rounds, with a total of 25 datasets assessed by 3 reviewers each. We analyzed the evaluations after each round and introduced changes to the rubric and toolkit that would reduce inconsistencies iteratively. These figures here show the progression of inter-rater reliability from a first training round to round 1, round 2, and round 3, where finally round 3 has all values indicating excellent agreement. Therefore, we could see that the iterative development of the rubric was improving the overall consistency of the evaluations. However, we did also identify 4 recurrent challenges. Firstly, we have the challenge false friends. There are some terms that are shared between data curation and ML, or computing broadly, that have non-shared meanings. For example, reliability in engineering refers to expected consistency in performance. For datasets, reliability is understood as the trustworthiness of data in terms of accuracy and consistency. But in data curation, reliability is defined as whether the data is capable for standing for the facts to which it attests. For example, if a dataset is a compilation of social media posts, then evaluating reliability would include questioning whether these contributions were really posted. Next, we have the challenge of interpretative flexibility. The rubric is designed as an open-ended evaluation tool, which means that evaluation criteria can be interpreted in multiple ways, which can lead to differing evaluations. For example, in assessing ethicality, the rubric evaluations were widely divergent, where one rater was fully satisfied by a discussion of potential negative impacts, while another recognized these statements as typical and expected more. The third challenge is depth of analysis. This challenge occurs because reviewers bring differing expertise and technical know-how to evaluating an element. For example, the criteria for interoperability requires reviewers to assess whether the metadata and data are readable by humans and machines. This can be interpreted by evaluating whether the dataset is made available in a standardized and documented format. But data format standardization has multiple levels. For example, one reviewer may see CSV files as standardized formats, whereas another reviewer with more expertise may know that even CSV files have to additionally include clear definitions of each column to be human and machine readable. The last challenge in designing the rubric was scoping the expected standard of documentation from dataset creators. For example, in evaluating the maintenance of integrity while developing the dataset, which is the minimum standard criteria, and management of integrity for appropriate reuse in the future, which is the standard of excellence criteria, it is challenging to scope which points in the data pipeline the dataset creators are responsible for documenting processes around integrity. Firstly, for false friends, evolving documentation, such as the toolkit, can aid with defining, understanding, and navigating the differences in shared terms. Secondly, we believe the challenge of interpretative flexibility presents an opportunity to engage in collaboration that broadens the association between data curation and ML dataset development. Since the rubric requires descriptive evaluation, it is going to need interpretation. Therefore, approaching interpretative disagreements as a way to understand evaluators' perspectives can actually prompt more reflexivity and help in progressing the interdisciplinarity between the fields. Similarly, the optimal depth of analysis will vary because depth of expertise varies and disagreements happen on different levels. These can become prompts for deeper levels of assessment and lead to generative discussion. Lastly, scoping occurs because of the entanglement of data curation and ML. The processes of curation and dataset development are not linear and are inseparable in practice, but they are conceptually separable. Datasets also regularly reuse prior datasets, which makes it difficult to know the appropriate boundary of responsibility for documentation. A guiding principle for this boundary, adopted from data curation, can be to maintain the chain of custody. This means that dataset creators should be expected to provide all possible documentation relating to their processes and point to others' documentation for processes outside their control. So what's next? The framework I've presented today is a diagnostic aid that you can use as formative evaluation that helps you decide how to improve your own datasets documentation or evaluate others, and develop or propose stage objectives to improve documentation practices. The key takeaway here is that by incorporating data curation norms, evaluation criteria, and terminology into evaluation guidelines for ML, the framework contributes to normalizing the idea that data curation is part of ML and guides the community to systematically addressing it and evaluating it. Thank you for listening.